For step 4, I had you color each of your letters with several patterns. I specifically asked you not to cut out these letters. Today I'm going to have you draw tabs on the outside of your letters. These are rectangles that are approximately 1/2 inch wide. If you're having a hard time visualizing how you're going to make a sculpture out of your letters, it's important to include as many tabs as you can. That way, when you start forming your sculpture with your letters, you can decide which tabs you want to keep or which tabs you want to cut off. The tabs are there to secure one letter to another so that there is some stability in your structure. For this step, not only is it important to have scissors, but it is very helpful to have a utility knife, or in this case, I'm using an X-Acto knife. I'm also using a cutting mat, but you can use some thick cardboard to lay down so you don't destroy the surface you're working on as well. Since we're using a thicker paper, it's much easier to fold down those tabs if you take your X-Acto knife and gently cut on the edge of your letter, making sure that you're not going all the way through the paper. If you don't have access to an X-Acto knife or a utility box cutter, just do your very best at folding down those tabs on your own. You may also want to clean up the edges with your Sharpie marker, just in case there's a little bit of white still showing. Unless you have an X-Acto knife and you feel confident with your cutting abilities, I would leave the center of your letters as is. Don't worry about trying to cut them out like I'm showing you here. As soon as I've finished cutting out the center of my O, I'm going back with my Sharpie marker just to clean up some of those edges where there's white showing. Now I'm moving on to my next letter, making sure that when I'm cutting out the tabs and the letter that I'm being super careful not to cut into the letter, not to rip any areas off, and obviously not to cut the tabs. Depending on your letter, you might have a hard time getting your scissors into those tight areas. If you don't have an X-Acto knife, you need to problem solve what you can do. Part of your problem solving could be to leave a white border around your entire letter, so you don't have to worry about getting into those tight areas. Just like I showed you with the O, it's important to take that X-Acto knife and gently score the area around the letter so that the tabs fold under. Obviously, if you don't have an X-Acto knife, you just have to do your best at folding down those tabs. Since I do have an X-Acto knife and I am confident with my cutting skills, I'm going to cut out the circle inside of the Y. Like I said before, leave this area completely white. You don't have to cut it out if you don't have the cutting tools available to you. After you've cut out all of your letters, you should be able to fold in all of your tabs, and there shouldn't be any white showing on the outer edges of your letters. For the final step, take your letters and the base that you created, and now it's time to assemble your letters onto your base. During this step, it's really important to use a lot of problem-solving skills and creativity to structure your letters so it looks like a sculpture. Don't hesitate to reach out to other classmates and to me if you want advice or you want some suggestions on how to create your sculpture. Since I do have an X-Acto knife, I'm choosing to cut a slit on the base that is the same width as my tab So then I can just press or push in the tab inside that base. The other option is to glue the tab right onto the base. My goal is to have my letter Y stand completely straight up. And in order to do so, I need to take my hot glue gun and put a little bit of glue between the letter and the base. Once I put a little bit of glue on, then I'm going to hold on to the letter exactly where I want it to be when everything sets up. Now that I've placed my first letter exactly where I want it, I need to decide where to place my remaining letters. This is where the problem-solving part comes in. My goal is to have all my letters connected in some way. So I'm just trying different options to see what looks best. The tabs that you've included on your letter should help with the process of making your sculpture. As you're building up your sculpture, whenever you decide that you don't need a tab, make sure that you cut those tabs off as you go along. The last advice I would like to leave you with is this. Make sure that when you're using your hot glue gun, that you're using it sparingly. Just put enough glue down to attach your letters. You don't need much, and you don't want it to distract from your base or your sculpture.